All right, hello everybody. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am absolutely thrilled. I am chatting with the one and only, the one and only Mr. W.M. Titsworth, aka Emperor Titsworth, aka Mike Titty, of course, of Angkor Wat fame. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Excellent. Doing well, doing well. Very excited to be chatting with you today. Well, I guess maybe we'll start off with kind of present tense, kind of what's happening now. I know, I guess it would have been about 2 years ago, Angkor Wat released an EP, a wonderful EP, Worst Enemy. And that was so exciting. Just the fact that Angkor Wat is back. The band is back. I think you guys have been doing some live stuff prior to the EP for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. But so I was really curious about, I guess, kind of how that came about. The reformation of the band.
Well, we took a 30-year break,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that's probably long enough, maybe. Can't how can you miss us if we never go away,
All
right?
right.
So we got like 6 in the morning. David Nuss, who's Angkor Wat's drummer, sends me a text message, and I'm like, "Who's texts me at 6 in the morning?" He's like, "What are you doing on June 5th or something?" I was like, maybe sleeping in if you let me." Uh, and he said, "No, we're getting inducted into the South Texas Music Walk of Fame down in Corpus."
Oh, cool.
I was like, "Oh, that's kind of nice. Right on. We'll be next to Selena and Chris Christopherson. It'll be good company to keep."
Yeah.
And so we got in touch with everybody, and we just started joking around. And I said, "Well, Nuss, bring your bongos, and we'll do an acoustic set just for laughs." That was a joke. We weren't going to, really do that. And then it evolved into, well, I guess maybe we should learn these songs again and see what happens. So we got together like 3 times, I guess, in the time, like the 2 months leading up to that. And it was all OG members, Brinkman on vocals, Trevino on bass. I took the duty of switching over from bass to filling 2 guitar players' shoes
Oh, okay.
because they didn't want to be involved. And Nuss got back on the drums, so we decided to do it as 4-piece. And we decided to, book a gig at the House of Rock down in Corpus, cross our fingers, see if anybody showed up. And we were really pleasantly surprised that we were the only band that played that night. And we had no social media, nothing
Right.
to speak of. We were just hoping off word of mouth this would happen. And we only charged $5 like it's old school days.
Nice.
And we sold the place out. The line was around the block. 325 people showed up to say hey. It was like a high school reunion.
Nice.
We had a good time. We threw down for 30 minutes, and after that we were like, maybe we should do this again. So we kept playing with around the state with like Skate Nigs and the Confused guys. We did a little tour, 5-day tour around Texas with the Accused AD.
Oh, cool.
And we kept, during this time, I had a bunch of jams that, like old riffs from the Angkor Wat days, guitar riffs, but I was the bass player, so nobody listened to me about those riffs. But I was like, we could recycle these, and I had the songs already done. So we came into my studio here and hammered it out, and like soup to nuts, every song took about a day. Brinkman came up here, Trevino, we all sat around, no lyrics on these songs. Nuss cut his parts, I cut my parts, Trevino did his stuff, we had no lyrics. Brinkman and I sat around, what do you think about this? And we just hammered it out, and so it was really painless and pretty effortless. And
Cool.
then we had all these tracks, and we said, well, let's get Carrie involved. Carrie Crafton, who did the first 2 Angkor Wat albums and did like Dead Horse and Rigor Mortis, Scratch Acid. So called Kerry up and said, "Hey, can you fix these tracks?" And we sent them to him, and he put his little special sauce on it and sent it back to us. And we just, worked with an artist in Indonesia and got some nice artwork together and put it out online with our website for the fans. That was basically it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, and I love that when it was released, and probably to this day still, I think it says something like, yeah, pay what you want. Kind of, DIY, pay what you want. Here's our new EP, which is fantastic, by the way. I've really been enjoying it, listening to it. It's
Thanks.
These last couple of years since it came out, it's been great. And just the fact that, yeah, you guys are doing stuff again is very exciting.
And Brinkman sounds insane on it. It's just,
wow,
the guy's retiring. I think he retired this month. He's no spring chicken. He sounds insane.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Do you guys have any intention of doing more stuff? Maybe a full-length album, or have you?
Yeah, we do. I've got, on my computer, I've got a whole slew of tracks that's ready to go that are Angkor Wat-ish.
Okay.
But we're operating out of a number of cities right now, and like Brinkman's in the process of tying things up at his work and living the leisurely life, and Trevino's doing his thing, and me with my job, I manage a Gold's Gym, and so I'm at the gym a lot and pretty busy. So we're gonna find a way to get it done. But we're like, we were gone for 30 years. There's no rush.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, very cool. Do you have a working title at this point? Maybe it's too early to.
We're the one thing that we keep kind of dwelling on is this hunt you down concept. Because we just, all being parents and the way it is, and we're just kind of a bunch of aggro people at the time. So we've got this kind of loose theme going on. But that could all change as soon as we get in the room and start hashing it out,
Nice.
Because it operates like very much like a democracy, because everybody's, writing lyrics and giving input about, that doesn't work. Let's try this. And so we just get it done with as little drama as possible. It's a much different approach than it was back in the day. So it's different.
Yeah. Sounds like it sounds very enjoyable. It sounds like you guys are having a good time doing this.
And that's what it should be. That's, when it becomes a pain in the butt, go collect stamps or coins or something to get another hobby.
Right. Nice. Very cool. And I know, speaking of hobbies, if I guess you could call it that, I mean, you are a professional musician, but your other facet of music is your Emperor Titsworth page, where you on YouTube, you have a channel on YouTube where you've been doing covers, and amazing covers, I must say as well. I've been really enjoying what you've been putting out there, and it's for those that haven't watched it, it's a mix of metal and underground metal and thrash and punk and pop and new wave music, and it's
hip hop.
Yeah, and hip hop as well. Yeah. And Public Enemy, and all sorts of great stuff on there. And your take on these pieces, which has been really cool, and especially with the I think the the covers you've done, like Napalm Death and The Accused and all these great bands from that era, the Misfits, you do a great job with those. But I really have been loving kind of your more metal punk take on kind of these pop and new wave songs. It's really interesting to hear that, like Susie and the Banshees and Big Country and stuff that I grew up and love. And as much of a metalhead as I am, I love all that stuff. And so it's a cool. What prompted that? What made you decide to go down that path?
Well, listening to some of these songs, they're still my favorite songs. I pick a band that I really like, and then I will, I just imagine it. How would this sound with a 7-string? So I just kind of give it a little more oomph. Like, what would it sound like today? And I try to keep everything in the same key, same tempos. I just, I change the keyboard parts to guitar parts, layer the crud out of it, have a good time and get to the point where I'm happy with it, and to the point where I'd rather hear my version than the old version, the other
Okay.
version, the original version. If I can get to that point where I'm like, yeah, I like that much, then I'll be like, okay, I'll put it out there and see what everybody else thinks.
Cool. Very cool. And you play all the instruments, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Except for every once in a while, I'll do a shout out on Facebook, like I did a Broken Bones cover,
Mm.
and I threw out there who wants to do the backups. And so I had a bunch of people just sending me little phone files of them saying "Seeing Through My Eyes," you know, screaming that, and I layered all that in there.
Oh,
It's
very
just
cool.
as a fun thing to do with everybody.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Yeah, and I'm excited. I know not too long ago you posted on your Facebook page that some more stuff you're working on or things that are to come in the not too distant future. So I'm excited for that. Excited to see what you're going to do with and kind of branching out a little bit. It looked like you were. I remember. I'm trying to remember what I remember. The Cult was one of them. I believe Scorpions. I think was on the
Yeah,
list, and maybe Rat as well. Uh,
yeah.
so that'll be cool. That'll be really interesting to hear.
I'm gonna go all hair metal on it and shred some solos just to, you know, before my fingers fall off and I can't do it anymore.
Nice. Very cool. I love it. That's so cool. Um, do you I'd imagine because I know the page is getting fairly popular. Do you take requests ever? Have you ever had people like, hey, will you do this? And
I have, and I've got them in a in the file folders of bands, you know, to do. I'll probably be able to do this till I'm 80 at this point.
nice.
I turned 54 this week, so I got a little time.
Oh, yeah.
But I threw that out there once. What would you like to hear? And somebody put a suggestion in, and then a month later unfriended me because I hadn't gotten around to it. I'm like, man, I have a life. I got you know stuff to do.
Yeah.
These are suggestions, and I appreciate you know giving what you want to hear, but yeah, I got stuff
Yeah.
that has to be done.
Yeah, and I would think, yeah, I mean,
So
I wouldn't expect you to crank something out, the next day. I mean, yeah, it's going to take some time and
but some of the suggestions I've been like, I forgot about that song, you know, and it like a Belphegor song that I did is like German new wave band
yeah.
that really influenced Nine Inch Nails, and they should have been huge, but they weren't. And so I thought about, do one of those. So that, you know, I do take these suggestions. Somebody mentioned a Dead Kennedys, so I'll probably, you know, tackle one of those
Cool.
because I've always wanted to do one of those. So, you know, it's when I get time, throw on all the microphones, turn everything on, and just hammer it out.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. It's been really entertaining. Every time you post, I'm like all over it. Like, oh, another song, cool. So yeah, lots of great stuff on there. It's been really fun to have you had any suggestions where you're like, hell no, I'm not doing that song. That's
Yeah, anything by Huey Lewis, nah,
Good.
it's not gonna happen. Sorry.
Good. Um, that is great. That's funny. I love, like, again, I love that you're playing all the instruments. It's such a cool idea to do that, and I know there's some people that do things like that, but I love the fact that you've gone kind of, full bore, jumped into this. You put out quite a lot of stuff over the last couple of years, like a significant amount.
Yeah, it's probably 2 albums worth easily.
Yeah. And I know you, speaking of albums, you mentioned that you're considering actually putting this out as, putting some of this out as, collecting it and putting it out as an album. Is that still in the works, or?
It's in the works. Mystic Records out of LA has expressed interest in putting it out.
Oh, great.
They put the Exploited cover that I did on a compilation.
Oh.
And that's about to come out. That came out on CD. It's coming out on vinyl soon, and it's distributed by Sony. So we've talked about, doing like maybe the alternative stuff on one record and the punk hardcore crossover metalish stuff on another. And I've talked to a friend of mine, Marty, who 20 years ago I said, man, someday you've got to do an album cover for me, because I just love his art. And as cheesy as the whole Emperor Titsworth thing is, it's the idea we have for the cover is so over the top and stupid that it can't not get done.
Nice.
So we got plans, And then by the time this comes out, I'll probably have a hair metal album finished and a country album. So who knows where it'll go.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's such a cool idea. I was gonna ask. I just forgot what I was asking about that.
The country album.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I love the idea of you putting out this. Oh, I was curious. Have you had any feedback from any of the musicians, the original recording artists? Have any of them reached out to you? Have you got any feedback from anybody?
I've sent it to a couple of people that I admire. I sent the Discharge song to Bones and the Broken Bones song to him. I can't remember if I got anything back from that. I sent David J. the Bauhaus and the Love and Rockets cover.
Oh, cool.
And we got crickets. But Paris from Cro-Mags gave me some really good feedback.
Oh, nice.
He's like, you messed up the riff. And there's a different riff on this one part. And I was like, what? And he's like, your band messed it up. There's no band. It's just me that messed up. And so I listened back to it. And I was like, oh, it's a little bit different. So I chalk it up to artistic license.
There you go.
But he liked the vocals a lot. So that was kind of nice. Yay, cool. Paris. And go listen to the Agros, Paris's new band.
Oh, okay.
They're good. He didn't mess up the chords. Sounds like what he meant to do.
Nice. Yeah. Super talented guy. Yeah, Paris is great. Yeah, nice.
And he can talk some smack. That guy can talk some smack.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other guys in the Cro-Mags can talk some smack too, but Paris's smack talking is next level.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've seen it. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I think I've seen him kind of throw down on some other bands in the past.
Yeah, you can tell he lived in Texas for a while.
Okay. Very cool. So let's go take a trip in the Wayback Machine. I'm curious about kind of your musical upbringing. Did you come from a musical family? Kind of what was the impetus for you becoming a musician?
Well, when I was 5, my aunt was finishing her music degree at Trinity University in San Antonio. And so I think her final project was, I can teach this idiot to play piano. So I became her guinea pig and I did a recital there. And so that kind of started everything.
Oh.
And then I tried out for choir in 6th grade, and Mrs. Loomis hit the chords on the piano and I sang, and she said, you can't sing. So I did. So that was a no-go. I thought, well, maybe I don't sound as good as I think I do in the shower. And so I kind of blew that off. And then my family had 50-yard line tickets on the visitor side at Texas Stadium, at the Cowboys Stadium, during the 60s and 70s. And so I would always go there with my Polaroid camera, and my dad's watching the game, and I'm taking pictures of the cheerleaders. And I came up to him with this whole handful of Polaroids, and I said, Dad, how do I get one of these girls? And he said, I'll buy you a guitar. So he bought me a guitar, and then I was like, all right, this is what happens. And music never got me the girl, but it was a lot of fun, playing guitar. So that's where it kind of started. And then my aunt, who had taught me piano, started teaching me guitar. And she said, okay, here's this song. It's Sha Na Na, Get a Job. I'm like, okay, got it. Can you teach me Battle Axe by Quiet Riot? Which is a very intricate neoclassical guitar piece by Carlos Cavazos. And she went, I don't know how to do that. And I said, well, why do you got a degree in music then, Becky? And so from that point, I figured, well, okay, I won't be able to handle that. So I'm going to go to Black Flag because I can handle that. And so that's kind of where I jumped off into punk rock stuff, because I could just stand up there and let feedback happen and figure out how to do bar chords really fast.
Right on.
And from that point, I had a punk rock band called Raw Sewage, which I thought was funny, a funny name because we thought we were the shit, Raw Sewage. And we did that, and the Willies, another hardcore band, and then I got recruited into Angkor Wat, and
Okay.
that's where it kind of jump started from there.
So was Angkor Wat already going at that point?
Yeah, they've been around for about a year.
Okay.
And they were doing some, transitional changes and stuff. And so I came in to be the bass player. Mike Trevino and me do the swapping thing. It's him, it's me, and it's him, it's me. So we take turns. And so I did the bass stuff for them from, I think the first gig was Halloween of '87 until I got oil slicked in April of '89 in San Antonio. And that was the end of that for a while.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's it. What I think is, and I guess is testament to the staying power and the impact of Angkor Wat and your musicianship as well with that band, is the fact that, I mean, they had 2 full-length albums, in the early days, 87 or 89 and 90, I guess it would have been 91. And then, and then also the demo from 87. So the Destruction demo. But the fact that, one, the band is back, but also the fact that I think with, when Obscenity becomes is such a powerful album. It's like the Crumbsuckers or Ludachrist or these bands that had fairly short lives originally, but the impact is so long lasting. There's so many bands today that are still impacted by that sound, and you hear young bands talking about Angkor Wat and Crumbsuckers and Cro-Mags, and which is cool, and again, kind of testament to how important these bands were at the time. Which I don't know if we, it was important to me as a high school student to have this rebellious, kind of, thrash crossover music at the time, but I don't know if I realized how impactful it was until later when, as I got older, and not a nostalgia thing, but just like, wow, that music really impacted the way I listen to music now. Which I think is cool.
We worked really hard on that album, that first one. There was a lot. I mean, we would rehearse 3 times a week in Danny's bedroom, and Danny Lohner, he gave up so much for that band because he had no bed. He slept on the floor, and he was like 15, 16 years old, so we could have all the PA in there and the huge drum set and everything. He slept on the floor every night. And his parents were kind enough to let us infiltrate the house that often and make that much racket. But we really tried to hone our craft in that room so that first album was as massive as we could make it. And we tried to do something different and, with it. And that's Kerry, he's the secret weapon, Kerry Crafton, to make it sound the way it did. And it still has something to it. There's an aggressiveness and there's a vitality to it and a youthful exuberance that it's hard to capture unless you're just all in. And that's kind of what we were doing at that time.
Yeah, agreed. And it seems that he really captured, I think, as you mentioned, that exuberance, that kind of live, kind of how you guys at that time sounded live too. I think he really captured the essence of the band in a lot of ways, and that's not always easy. I think, people think it can't, it's like, oh yeah, you just go in and record, and it's like, well, yeah, to actually get the true sound of the band, because you hear all the horror stories of all these bands, talking about producers changing their sound, and it's like, yeah, we didn't sound like that. That wasn't
right.
But whereas I think and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seemed like as a listener, it seems like he really captured what you guys were about, which I thought was cool. And as you said, I mean, yeah, nobody sounded like Angkor Wat. I mean, you know, there were bands in the same genre, of course, but you had such a unique sound, which is what really kind of captured my interest and sparked my interest in the band.
Yeah, it does have something to it, and maybe it's because it was a little out of tune. It's when we were relearning the songs, I was like, you know, somebody could have bought a tuner back in the day. You know, it might have been a good investment.
Yeah. Well,
But, you know,
it's amazing too how young you guys were. You were just kids, really. I mean, just
pretty much. We had a big age gap. You know, Nuss and Danny were 16, I guess. I was already about 19. Guitar player's 25, and Brinkman was like almost 30 at that time. Yeah. So we had a nice age range, and I think that also was a big part of like our ability to convey a message, because it was like the youthfulness, but also kind of like, yeah, I got a mortgage. You know, so there's this aspect of it, or I'm still in college trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. So there's this whole spectrum, I think, that got captured in that, especially the first album.
Nice.
And, you know, the second album was, you know, there was a few songs, 3 songs on there, I guess, that were songs that the original crew did. And then, you know, they were trying to finish off the contract with Metal Blade to get that one done. And so that one was a lot of, I've heard this, I wasn't there for that one, so I heard the stories about that one. It doesn't sound like a pleasant experience from anybody's vantage point, but there's some very interesting music on that one for sure.
Yeah.
And we don't play anything off that album.
Okay.
We don't touch that one.
Gotcha.
That's kind of like, that was a different time and a different kind of era for Angkor Wat. And I think the thing about Angkor Wat, that's like, if you think about the place Angkor Wat, that it started as a Hindu temple, and then it became a Buddhist temple, and then it became ruins, you know. So to me, the band Angkor Wat has taken this same kind of trajectory. It kind of, you know, flows with time a little bit, and it's changing, but it's yet still the same, because there's some stuff that connects it, you know, through the whole course of its history.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, and it's amazing that, yeah, the name fits really well. That's fascinating.
But it's an awful name. Nobody can spell it right. Right. It's like the worst. Even band members spell it wrong. I mean, it's like, you got to really think about it. A-N-G, what? Is that right?
Yeah, K, yeah.
Yeah. When we were on tour with the Accused AD, guy brought out his leather jacket. He's like, Brinkman, you know, do the logo on here. Brinkman did it. And the guy was like, you forgot the G. And so he figured out how to make it work.
Oh, you misspelled your own name.
Yeah. It happens all the time. It really does. But he made it work, and that's that artistic license I was talking about earlier. Just make it work.
Yeah. That is interesting. That's fascinating that you said, yeah, that kind of the change, and as you mentioned, you know, you weren't on that second album, and nothing against the players on that album, but it felt very different I remember when that came out, Corpus Christi, when that came out. It's like, this isn't the same band. Like, it just was totally different, which isn't a bad thing. It wasn't really what I wanted. So I guess
it's a lot of people. There's only one show that they played off that album, and they played at a pizza place in Corpus. And usually the crowds were just like insane at Angkor Wat shows. And the one picture I've seen from that show is this: everybody in the crowd going, like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So, but then, you know, to fulfill, you know, for the third album that they were supposed to do as Angkor Wat, they made the right decision and changed the name to Screw.
Oh, okay.
Much better name.
Yeah. Well, and they probably should have done that with the second album too. Probably changed.
Probably so.
It wasn't really the same band anymore, and
yeah. But that's it. Kind of goes with the trajectory, like I was talking about. It's, you know, it's an evolving thing.
Yeah.
And it works out. It's different now than it was back then.
Yeah.
But we try to, with the new stuff, with that new EP, we tried to hold kernels of what made Angkor Wat special and still trying to make it a little bit modern and a little bit like of the present moment. Yeah. And, our approach to lyrics is more, because we're, ultimately a crossover band. And in divisive times like we have now, artists have to walk a fine line and not make one side angry about the other, or pick too hard of a stance. So we're very much aware that what we need to present is something that needs to be universal in a way that it's felt, and there can be very little argument about what the substance of it is.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it is, as you mentioned, it's a very divisive time. It's a very different, I guess it has been. I guess with social media, it's more in your face than it ever was before. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors. It's the age of quarrel, right?
Yeah.
I think, and generally, I think people are lonely, and people want touchstones to reality, and the touchstones always get moved. And that's what I kind of like doing these covers too with the Emperor Titsworth stuff, is it's kind of a touchstone to the past. Like, people may have really loved these songs, but they haven't heard them in a while. And maybe they hear my version and they're like, oh, I want to go listen to the originals, and maybe bring them back to a place where they felt a certain way.
Yeah.
So that's another reason I do that. I do that for myself as well as I'm doing those.
Oh, okay. Very cool. I like that. Well, Mike, this has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I really enjoyed this. And for those for those of you watching, if you look in the description below, there's a link to Angkor Wat's social media pages. You definitely want to check them out. Download the EP if you don't have it already. Worst Enemy, it kicks ass. It's fantastic. And if you can find it, if you don't have this wonderful album, you should find this. You can, I'm sure Discogs or, hopefully maybe in a, little corner record store somewhere you'll find it, but what a phenomenal album. And then also the Emperor Titsworth, there's also a link below as well. So you can check out Mike's page there. It's a lot of fun. Every song on there is just a gem, and it's the more and more I listen to it, the more exciting it is for me. So it's been just great having that there. I love it so much. So Mike, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been, as I said, an absolute pleasure and an honor. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
I've enjoyed this as well. I don't do this very often, if ever. So I appreciate getting the opportunity to do this with you.
All right. Thank you, sir.